The morning air carried a sharp chill as Sarah Matthews hurried down the bustling streets of Chicago. At 32, she had perfected the art of navigating the city's morning rush while balancing a coffee cup in one hand and her phone in the other. Today, however, was different. An unexpected cold front had swept through the Midwest overnight, catching many, including Sarah, unprepared. 52 missed calls from Mom, Sarah muttered to herself, scrolling through her notifications. Her mother's concern was warranted. Sarah had recently lost her job as a marketing coordinator at a firm that had downsized without warning. 3 years of dedication had ended with a brief meeting and a small severance package that would barely cover next month's rent. She tucked her phone away and pulled her light jacket tighter around her shoulders. The weather forecast hadn't mentioned temperatures dropping into the low 40s, and Sarah cursed herself for not checking before leaving her apartment. The coffee shop interview she was heading to was still 8 blocks away, and already her fingers were growing numb. As she waited at a crosswalk, Sarah noticed a man sitting against the brick wall of a nearby convenience store. His weathered face and gray beard were partially hidden behind a cardboard sign that read, "Veteran. Anything helps. God bless." What caught her attention wasn't the sign, a common sight in downtown Chicago, but the violent shivering of his shoulders. The man wore only a thin, tattered jacket that provided little protection against the unseasonable cold. The crosswalk light turned green, and the crowd surged forward. Sarah hesitated, then stepped out of the flow of pedestrians. In her tote bag was a thick wool blanket her grandmother had knitted for her birthday last year. She had brought it along today, planning to drop it off at her sister's apartment after the interview, as her sister had admired it for months. "Excuse me," Sarah said, approaching the man cautiously. His eyes, a startling clear blue, looked up at her with a mixture of wariness and resignation, the look of someone who had grown accustomed to being alternately ignored and harassed. "I noticed you seem cold," she continued, pulling the blanket from her bag. "I thought you might need this more than I do today." The man stared at the blanket, then at Sarah, suspicion evident in his expression. "Why?" he asked simply, his voice hoarse. Sarah shrugged. "Because it's cold, and blankets help with that." She extended it toward him. "It's clean, and it's pretty warm. My grandma made it." After a moment's hesitation, he reached out and took the blanket. His fingers were rough and calloused, and Sarah noticed a military tattoo partially visible on his wrist. "Thank you," he said quietly, immediately wrapping it around his shoulders. "Name's Michael." "I'm Sarah. Nice to meet you, Michael." He nodded, a small smile breaking through his weathered features. "Your grandma's got talent. This is real quality." "She'd be happy to hear that," Sarah replied, glancing at her watch. The interview was in 20 minutes. "I've got to run, but take care of yourself, okay?" Michael nodded again, pulling the blanket tighter. "God bless you, Sarah." As she hurried away, Sarah felt a pang of guilt for the brevity of their interaction. She could have offered to buy him breakfast or given him some cash. The blanket seemed inadequate against the broader challenges the man clearly faced. But she was running late, and her own financial situation was precarious at best. What Sarah didn't notice as she rushed toward her interview was the sleek black sedan parked across the street, or the man in an expensive suit watching their interaction through the tinted window. The coffee shop was warm and inviting, the smell of freshly ground beans momentarily distracting Sarah from her nervousness. The interview went surprisingly well. The manager, a woman named Diane with kind eyes and a no-nonsense attitude, seemed impressed by Sarah's experience and enthusiasm. "We're a small operation compared to your previous company," Diane explained, "but we're expanding. We need someone who understands digital marketing and can grow with us." "That's exactly what I'm looking for," Sarah replied earnestly. "Somewhere I can make a real impact." By the time Sarah left the coffee shop, the sun had broken through the clouds, taking the edge off the morning chill. The interview had lasted longer than expected, and she felt cautiously optimistic about her prospects. As she walked back toward the subway station, she found herself taking the same route as earlier. Michael was still there, now wrapped in her grandmother's blanket, a paper cup of coffee beside him. He smiled when he saw her. "How'd it go?" he asked, surprising her with his memory of her hurry. "I think it went well," Sarah replied, stopping briefly. "You look a bit warmer." "Thanks to you," he said. "This blanket's the real deal. Haven't been this comfortable in a long time." Sarah hesitated, then pulled out her wallet. She had $10, money she had budgeted for lunch, but lunch could wait. "Here," she said, handing him the bill. "Get something hot to eat." Michael shook his head. "You already gave me the blanket. Keep your money. You look like you could use a good meal yourself." The comment struck Sarah more deeply than she expected. Was her financial strain that obvious? "Please," she insisted, placing the money beside his coffee cup. "My grandmother would want you to have a hot meal to go with her blanket." Before he could protest further, Sarah continued on her way, feeling both lighter and heavier at the same time. The small act of kindness had cost her more than she could comfortably afford, yet she couldn't bring herself to regret it. That night, in her small apartment, Sarah called her mother to assure her she was fine, despite the job loss. She didn't mention giving away the blanket or the $10. Some actions felt too personal to share, too simple to explain without seeming either self-congratulatory or foolish. As she drifted off to sleep, Sarah wondered about Michael, whether he had found a warm place to spend the night, whether the blanket was enough, whether she should have done more. She had no way of knowing that her small act of kindness had set in motion events that would change her life in ways she couldn't imagine. 3 days after giving Michael the blanket, Sarah received a call offering her the position at the coffee shop. The pay was less than her previous job, but it was better than nothing, and the hours would allow her to continue her freelance work on the side. It wasn't ideal, but it was a step forward. On her way to sign the employment paperwork, Sarah found herself looking for Michael near the convenience store, but he wasn't there. She felt a mix of disappointment and hope. Disappointment at not seeing him. Hope that perhaps his absence meant he had found better circumstances. As Sarah pushed open the door to the coffee shop, Diane greeted her with a smile. "There's someone here to see you," she said, gesturing toward a corner table where a man in an impeccably tailored suit sat reading a newspaper. "Me?" Sarah asked, confused. "I don't understand." "He asked for you specifically. Said it was important." Diane lowered her voice. "He's been waiting almost an hour." Cautiously, Sarah approached the table. The man looked to be in his 60s, with silver hair and the confident posture of someone accustomed to authority. When he noticed her approaching, he folded his newspaper and stood, extending his hand. "Ms. Matthews? I'm Robert Caldwell. I was hoping we might have a conversation." The name struck a chord of recognition. Robert Caldwell was the founder and CEO of Caldwell Innovations, a technology company whose headquarters dominated the Chicago skyline. His face occasionally appeared in business magazines and local news features about philanthropic initiatives. What could someone like him possibly want with her? "I'm sorry, Mr. Caldwell, but I think there must be some mistake," Sarah said, shaking his hand nonetheless. "No mistake," he assured her, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Please, join me. I promise I won't take much of your time." Sarah sat, still bewildered. Diane appeared with 2 fresh cups of coffee, giving Sarah a curious glance before returning to the counter. "I'm sure you're wondering why I wanted to meet you," Caldwell began, his voice measured and direct. "That would be an understatement," Sarah replied, finding her voice. Caldwell smiled, a genuine warmth reaching his eyes. "3 days ago you gave a blanket to a homeless man named Michael Doherty. You also gave him $10. Despite your own financial difficulties." Sarah stared at him, stunned. "How could you possibly know that?" "Michael is my brother-in-law," Caldwell said simply. The statement hung in the air between them. Sarah tried to process this information, but nothing about it made sense. "Your brother-in-law? But he was homeless." "Yes," Caldwell sighed, running a hand through his silver hair. "It's complicated. Michael was married to my sister, Catherine. After she died from cancer 5 years ago, he struggled. PTSD from his military service, which he'd kept at bay during their marriage, returned with a vengeance. He refused help, pushed everyone away, and eventually disappeared. My family has been looking for him for nearly 3 years." Sarah's mind raced, trying to reconcile the disheveled man on the street with a connection to one of Chicago's wealthiest businessmen. "But how did you find him? And what does this have to do with me?" "I hired private investigators to look for him, but Chicago is a big city." Caldwell took a sip of his coffee. As for how I found him this time, pure coincidence. I was on my way to a meeting when my driver took a different route due to construction. I happened to look out the window at exactly the right moment and recognized him. I was about to approach when I saw you give him the blanket. Caldwell leaned forward slightly. I watched that interaction, Ms. Matthews. I saw someone who clearly had little to spare, giving anyway. I had my assistant find out who you were. Sarah shifted uncomfortably. That sounds a bit invasive. It was, Caldwell admitted without apology. But it led me here. Michael is now receiving the care he needs. He's at a private facility that specializes in PTSD treatment for veterans. He didn't want to go, but he agreed on one condition. What condition? Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. That I thank you properly, Caldwell replied. He was quite insistent about it. The blanket meant a great deal to him, not just the warmth, but the humanity behind the gesture. He's kept it with him at the facility. Sarah felt her cheeks warm. It wasn't anything special. Anyone would have done the same. But they didn't. You did. Caldwell reached into his jacket and produced an envelope. I'd like to invite you to lunch tomorrow at my office. There's something I want to discuss with you. Sarah took the envelope warily. Mr. Caldwell, I appreciate the gesture, but I don't need a reward for basic human decency. This isn't about a reward, he assured her. It's about an opportunity. One I think might interest you, given your background in marketing. He stood, placing a business card next to her coffee cup. My private number. Call if you have any questions. The envelope contains details about tomorrow's lunch. I hope you'll come. With that, he nodded politely and left, leaving Sarah staring at the envelope in her hands. After signing her employment paperwork with Diane, who was bursting with curiosity but professional enough not to pry, Sarah opened the envelope on her way home. Inside was a formal invitation to lunch at Caldwell Tower the following day at 1 p.m., along with a note indicating that a car would pick her up at 12:30. That evening, Sarah researched Robert Caldwell extensively. His company, Caldwell Innovations, had revolutionized medical device technology over the past 20 years. More interestingly, Caldwell had recently launched a foundation focused on veterans' issues and homelessness, causes that now made more sense given his brother-in-law's situation. Sarah debated whether to accept the invitation. On one hand, it seemed excessive for such a small gesture. On the other, she was intrigued by Caldwell's mention of an opportunity. After several hours of indecision, she finally texted the number on his card to confirm her attendance. The response came immediately. Excellent. Looking forward to it. As she prepared for bed, Sarah found herself thinking about Michael, wondering how he was adjusting to the treatment facility after years on the street. She hoped the blanket provided some comfort in what must be a jarring transition. It seemed strange that such a simple act, giving away a blanket she hadn't even purchased herself, could create such an unexpected ripple effect in her life. Little did she know that the ripples were only beginning. Precisely at 12:30 the next day, a sleek black car pulled up outside Sarah's apartment building. The driver, a professional woman in a suit, opened the door for her. Ms. Matthews, I'm Helen, Mr. Caldwell's driver. He's looking forward to meeting with you. The drive to Caldwell Tower took them through downtown Chicago's financial district. Sarah had dressed in her best interview outfit, a navy blue blazer over a white blouse with matching slacks, but still felt underdressed when they pulled up to the gleaming skyscraper that housed Caldwell Innovations. The lobby was a testament to modern architecture, all glass, steel, and carefully curated art pieces. The receptionist greeted Sarah by name and directed her to a private elevator that whisked her to the top floor without stopping. When the doors opened, Sarah found herself in a minimalist reception area where a young man with a tablet waited. Ms. Matthews, welcome. I'm David, Mr. Caldwell's assistant. He's waiting for you in the conference room. David led her down a hallway lined with awards and photographs, many showing Caldwell with various political figures and celebrities. The conference room turned out to be an intimate dining space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a breathtaking view of Chicago's skyline. Robert Caldwell stood as she entered, gesturing to the table where lunch was already laid out. Sarah, thank you for coming. I hope you don't mind that I took the liberty of ordering for us. The chef here makes an excellent salmon. It looks wonderful, Sarah replied, taking the seat he indicated. This is all very unexpected. Caldwell smiled as he sat across from her. I imagine so. Before we discuss why I asked you here, I thought you might like an update on Michael. Sarah nodded, genuinely curious. How is he doing? Better than expected. The doctors are cautiously optimistic. He's agreed to stay for the full treatment program, something he's refused in the past. Caldwell poured water for both of them. He asked me to give you this. He handed Sarah a folded note. Opening it, she found a short message in careful handwriting. Sarah, thank you for the blanket, and for seeing me when others looked away. Sometimes a small kindness is enough to remind someone they're still human. Sarah felt her throat tighten with emotion. She carefully refolded the note and tucked it into her pocket. He's a good man, Caldwell said quietly. The war took parts of him, and losing Catherine took what was left. But he's still in there, fighting to come back. They ate in comfortable silence for a few minutes before Caldwell set down his fork and leaned forward slightly. Let me tell you why I asked you here, Sarah. After our meeting yesterday, I had my team do some research on you. Hope you don't mind. Seems to be becoming a habit, Sarah remarked, though without real irritation. Caldwell acknowledged this with a slight nod. Your previous employer speaks highly of your work. Your digital marketing campaigns increased their client engagement by 40% over 2 years. Impressive results. Thank you, Sarah said, uncertain where this was heading. I also learned that you were laid off due to budget cuts, not performance issues, and that you've been freelancing while looking for full-time work. He took a sip of water. I understand you just accepted a position at the coffee shop? Yes, yesterday. It's not ideal, but it's steady income while I build my client base. Caldwell nodded thoughtfully. What if I offered you an alternative? Sarah set down her fork. What kind of alternative? As I mentioned, I've recently established the Caldwell Foundation. Its primary focus is supporting veterans and addressing homelessness, issues that have become personal for obvious reasons. He gestured toward a folder beside her plate that she hadn't noticed before. The foundation needs a marketing director, someone who can build awareness, create compelling campaigns, and help us reach those who need our services most. Sarah stared at him, processing his words. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you an opportunity to interview for one, Caldwell clarified. Your qualifications are strong, but this position requires someone with particular sensitivity to the issues we address. Your interaction with Michael suggests you might have that sensitivity. He pushed the folder toward her. The details are all in here. Job description, compensation package, benefits. It would be a significant step up from your previous position, both in responsibility and salary. Sarah opened the folder, her eyes widening at the proposed compensation. Nearly double what she had earned at her previous job. This is very generous, but I'm not sure I understand why. A blanket and $10 hardly seem reason enough to consider me for such an important position. Caldwell leaned back in his chair, studying her for a moment. Let me tell you something about success in business, Sarah. Technical skills can be taught. Experience can be gained. But character, that's innate. When I saw you give that blanket to Michael, I saw someone with the exact character I want representing my foundation. He gestured to the documents. Take these home. Review them. If you're interested, come back tomorrow for a formal interview with the foundation's board. If not, no hard feelings. You'll still have a good story to tell about the billionaire who invited you to lunch. Sarah closed the folder, her mind racing. This is a lot to process. I understand. You don't need to decide right now. Caldwell checked his watch. Unfortunately, I have another meeting in 15 minutes. Helen will drive you home whenever you're ready. As they finished lunch, their conversation shifted to lighter topics. Favorite spots in Chicago, books they'd recently read, the unpredictable Midwest weather. Sarah found Caldwell surprisingly down-to-earth, despite his wealth and status. When they parted in the lobby, Caldwell shook her hand firmly. Regardless of your decision, Sarah, thank you for what you did for Michael. Some people spend their entire lives accumulating wealth, but never learn the value of simple kindness. Yochayan, on the drive back to her apartment, Sarah reviewed the contents of the folder. The position was real and substantial, not some made-up role created out of charity. The Caldwell Foundation had ambitious goals for veteran support programs, homeless outreach initiatives, and policy advocacy. That evening, Sarah called her mother, explaining the bizarre turn of events without mentioning the job offer yet. Her mother, predictably, was thrilled by the connection to someone as prominent as Robert Caldwell, though she chided Sarah for giving away the hand-knitted blanket. "Your grandmother spent months on that blanket, Sarah." "I know, Mom, but I think she'd approve of where it ended up." After hanging up, Sarah sat at her small kitchen table, the job description spread before her. The opportunity was incredible, the kind that could change the trajectory of her career and financial situation overnight. Yet something about it felt unearned, as if she were benefiting too greatly from such a small act of kindness. She thought about Michael's note. Sometimes a small kindness is enough to remind someone they're still human, and wondered if perhaps she was undervaluing her own actions. Maybe what seemed small to her had indeed been significant to someone who had been invisible to most passers-by. By midnight, Sarah had made her decision. She would go to the interview tomorrow, not because she felt entitled to the opportunity, but because she wanted to learn more about the Foundation's work. If she could contribute meaningfully to helping people like Michael, then perhaps this strange sequence of events had a purpose after all. The boardroom at the Caldwell Foundation was less intimidating than Sarah had anticipated. Instead of the cold corporate atmosphere she expected, the space felt welcoming, with photographs of veterans and community outreach programs adorning the walls. 5 people sat around the table: Robert Caldwell, 2 Foundation executives, a retired Army general, and a woman introduced as Dr. Rivera, who ran one of the Foundation's mental health programs for veterans. The interview lasted 2 hours, covering everything from Sarah's marketing experience to her ideas for raising awareness about veteran homelessness. She found herself speaking with unexpected passion about destigmatizing PTSD and creating campaigns that highlighted the human stories behind the statistics. "Numbers don't move people to action," Sarah explained. "Stories do. If we want donors and volunteers, we need to help them connect emotionally with the veterans we serve." By the time the interview concluded, Sarah felt confident in her performance, regardless of the outcome. As the others filed out, Caldwell asked her to stay behind. "The board will make its decision by tomorrow," he said, "but I wanted to show you something before you leave today." He led her to an elevator and inserted a key card. "We're going to one of our outreach centers. It's about 15 minutes from here." During the drive, Caldwell explained that the Foundation operated 3 outreach centers in Chicago, providing services ranging from hot meals and clean clothing to job placement assistance and mental health counseling. "We're expanding to 5 centers by next year," he added. "The need is greater than our current capacity." The center was housed in a renovated warehouse in a neighborhood that had seen better days. Inside, however, was a hive of activity: volunteers serving lunch, staff members conducting intake interviews, and clients using computer stations to search for jobs or housing. "We serve about 200 people daily at this location alone," Caldwell explained as they toured the facility. "Many are veterans, but we turn no one away." In a quiet corner of the center, Sarah spotted a familiar figure sitting at a table with a counselor. Michael looked markedly different from their first encounter. Clean-shaven, hair trimmed, wearing new clothes. The grandmother's blanket was folded neatly beside him. He glanced up and saw her, his face breaking into a surprised smile. After saying something to the counselor, he stood and walked over. "Sarah," he greeted her, extending his hand. "Robert said he was going to reach out to you, but I didn't expect to see you here." "I'm just visiting," Sarah replied, shaking his hand. "You look well." "Getting there," Michael said. "One day at a time, as they say in the program. The blanket helps." He gestured to the folded wool on the table. "Brings me luck." Caldwell excused himself to speak with the center's director, leaving Sarah and Michael to talk. "So," Michael said, sitting on a nearby bench and gesturing for her to join him, "Robert told me he offered you a job." "An interview," Sarah corrected, sitting beside him. "The decision isn't made yet." Michael nodded knowingly. "It is in his mind. Robert doesn't waste time once he's made a decision." He looked around the center. This place saved my life, you know. Not just the treatment, but being around other vets who understand. Feeling useful again. How so? Sarah asked. I volunteer 3 days a week now. Talk to the newly homeless vets. Help them navigate the system. He shrugged. Turns out I'm good at it. I've been where they are, know the pitfalls, the pride that keeps you from asking for help. Sarah smiled. That's wonderful, Michael. He looked at her intently. Your blanket was the first gift I'd accepted in years. Couldn't tell you why I took it that day. Maybe it was the cold. Maybe it was the way you didn't look at me with pity. Whatever the reason, it was the first step back. Before Sarah could respond, Caldwell returned. Sorry to interrupt, but we should head back, Sarah. Traffic will be picking up soon. Michael stood, extending his hand again. Good luck with the job. The foundation needs people who actually give a damn. On the drive back to Caldwell Tower, Sarah sat quietly, processing what she had seen. The outreach center had made the foundation's work tangible in a way that the interview and documents hadn't. Penny for your thoughts? Caldwell asked, breaking the silence. I'm just impressed, Sarah admitted. The center is doing important work. Caldwell nodded. It's a start. There's so much more to do. He glanced at her. Did talking with Michael help clarify things for you? Yes, Sarah said, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. If the board offers me the position, I'll accept. They will, Caldwell replied with confidence. Your ideas resonated with everyone, particularly Dr. Rivera. She's been advocating for exactly the kind of humanizing approach you described. Ooh. As they pulled up to the tower, Caldwell handed her a business card. The Foundation's HR director. She'll call you tomorrow with the formal offer and details. Assuming all goes as expected, we'd like you to start next Monday. Sarah took the card, still somewhat dazed by how quickly her circumstances had changed. Mr. Caldwell. Robert, please. Robert, she amended. I want to thank you for this opportunity, but I also want to be clear about something. I didn't give Michael that blanket expecting anything in return. I wouldn't want you to think— I know exactly why you gave him the blanket, Sarah, Caldwell interrupted gently. That's precisely why you're the right person for this job. The following Monday, Sarah walked into the Caldwell Foundation offices as its new marketing director. Her first project was to develop a campaign highlighting success stories of veterans who had received support through the Foundation's programs. Michael was among the first to volunteer his story, blanket and all. 6 months later, the campaign launched across multiple platforms. Donations to the Foundation increased by 60%, and volunteer applications tripled. The centerpiece of the campaign, a photograph of Michael, now employed as a peer counselor at the Outreach Center, with the same wool blanket draped over his shoulders, became the Foundation's unofficial symbol. On the 1-year anniversary of their first encounter, Sarah and Michael met for coffee at the shop where she had once interviewed for a barista position. They were joined by Sarah's grandmother, who had knitted a dozen more blankets for the Foundation's outreach centers. I never thought a blanket could start all this, her grandmother mused, watching as Michael showed her pictures of the new veteran housing facility where he now lived and worked. It wasn't the blanket, Michael said, his once weathered face now healthy and animated. It was being seen as a person, not a problem. That's what your granddaughter did that day. Sarah smiled, thinking about how a simple act on a cold morning had created such profound changes in multiple lives, including her own. The Foundation was thriving under her marketing leadership, and she had recently been promoted to the executive team. Sometimes, she said, echoing the words Michael had written to her a year ago, a small kindness is enough to remind someone they're still human, and sometimes that reminder is all it takes to change everything. Outside the coffee shop window, the first snowflakes of winter began to fall on the Chicago streets, a reminder of the cold day that had brought them together and the warmth they had found since.